Some secrets are not meant to be shared. I learned that lesson in the most devastating way possible, and the person who taught it to me was the same person I had once considered my closest confidant, my sister by choice, if not by blood. Her name was Madison, and for 6 years I believed she was the one person outside of my fiancé who truly understood me. I was wrong. I was so catastrophically, painfully wrong that when the truth finally revealed itself, I felt like the ground beneath my feet had turned to sand, and I was sinking with no way to stop the descent. But I am getting ahead of myself. To understand how deep this betrayal cut, you need to know where it all began. You need to understand the woman I was before Madison systematically dismantled my life, and you need to understand the woman I became when I finally decided that karma needed a little help. My name is Olivia, and this is the story of how I trusted my stepsister with one secret, and how that trust nearly destroyed everything I had worked my entire life to build. I was 23 years old when my father announced he was getting remarried. My mother had passed away from cancer when I was 15, and for 8 years it had just been the two of us against the world. My father, Richard, was a quiet man who expressed his love through actions rather than words. He worked 60-hour weeks at his accounting firm to make sure I could go to college without student loans. He sat with me through my grief when Mom died, never pushing me to move on faster than I was ready. He was my rock, my anchor, the only family I had left. So when he told me he had met someone, a woman named Catherine, I was happy for him, genuinely happy. My father deserved love. He deserved companionship. He deserved someone who would be there for him when I eventually moved out and started my own life. What I did not fully anticipate was that Catherine came with a daughter just 2 years younger than me, a daughter who would insert herself into my life in ways I never could have predicted. Madison was 21 when our parents married. She was beautiful in that effortless way that seemed almost unfair, with honey blonde hair that fell in perfect waves and green eyes that sparkled when she laughed. She had a way of making everyone around her feel special, like they were the only person in the room. When I first met her at a dinner our parents arranged, she complimented my earrings, asked thoughtful questions about my job, and by the end of the evening, I found myself thinking that maybe having a sister would not be so bad after all. The early years were good. Madison was finishing her business degree at a nearby university while I was climbing the ranks at a marketing firm in Boston. We would meet for coffee, go shopping together, share complaints about our parents' annoying habits. She told me about her string of dramatic boyfriends, and I told her about my own dating disasters. When I met Ethan at a work conference 2 years after our parents married, Madison was the first person I called to gush about the handsome software engineer who had asked for my number. She seemed genuinely happy for me. She helped me pick out outfits for our early dates, analyzed his text messages with me, celebrated when he asked me to be his girlfriend. When Ethan and I moved in together after a year of dating, Madison helped us paint the living room and assembled furniture with us until 2 in the morning. She was there for every milestone, every celebration, every small victory. But there were moments, looking back now, that should have given me pause. Small things I dismissed because I wanted so badly to believe that Madison was the sister I had always wished for. There was the time she made a joke about my apartment being small, quickly covering it with a laugh and an explanation that she was just teasing. There was the way her smile sometimes flickered when I talked about my promotion at work, a shadow crossing her face so quickly I convinced myself I had imagined it. There was the night she got drunk at my birthday party and made a comment about how some people just had all the luck, looking directly at me when she said it. I filed these moments away and forgot about them. Madison was struggling, I told myself. Her career was not taking off the way she had hoped. She had bounced between jobs since graduating, never quite finding her footing. Her relationships ended in flames, often dramatically, with tears and late-night phone calls where I would comfort her. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I had been promoted twice, I was living with the love of my life, and I was genuinely happy for the first time since my mother died. I think, on some level, I felt guilty for my happiness. Madison had grown up with every advantage, private schools and expensive vacations, and a mother who doted on her, yet she seemed perpetually dissatisfied with her life. I had grown up modestly, lost my mother as a teenager, and worked multiple jobs through college, yet things kept working out for me. It did not seem fair, and I think that guilt made me blind to what was happening right in front of my face. The turning point, the moment that set everything in motion, came during a weekend trip to our parents' lake house in New Hampshire. It was summer, 3 years after our parents married, and Ethan was working on a deadline, so I had driven up alone. Madison was already there when I arrived, lounging on the dock with a glass of wine, looking like something out of a lifestyle magazine. That evening, after our parents had gone to bed, Madison and I stayed up talking on the back porch. The wine was flowing, the stars were bright, and something in the atmosphere made me feel safe, made me feel like I could finally tell someone the truth I had been carrying for over a decade. Madison was talking about how perfect my life seemed, how I had it all figured out while she felt like she was constantly failing. She looked so vulnerable in that moment, so genuinely sad, that I felt compelled to show her that my life was not as perfect as it appeared. I wanted her to know that I understood struggle, that I had my own darkness, that she was not alone in feeling broken. So I told her. I told her everything. I told her that when I was 17, 2 years after my mother died, I had fallen into a deep depression. I told her that a doctor had prescribed me anxiety medication, which had helped at first, but then I had started taking more than I was supposed to, chasing the numbness, because feeling nothing was better than feeling the crushing weight of grief. I told her that by 18, I was dependent on those pills, buying extras from a friend whose mother had a prescription. I told her about the night I took too many and ended up in the hospital, my stomach pumped, my father's face gray with terror. I told her about the 3 months I spent in a residential treatment program, something my father and I had kept completely secret. He had told his office he was taking a sabbatical. I had deferred my college admission for a year. We told everyone I was traveling abroad, finding myself after the trauma of losing my mother. The truth was that I was in a facility in Connecticut, learning to live without the pills, attending therapy twice a day, and slowly rebuilding myself from the ground up. I had been completely sober for 11 years. I had done the work. I had become a different person. But that chapter of my life was something I had shared with exactly 2 people in the entire world, my father and Ethan. And now, in the intimacy of that summer night, I was sharing it with Madison. She cried when I told her. She held my hands and told me how brave I was, how strong, how inspiring. She said she would never tell anyone, that my secret was safe with her, that this made her feel closer to me than ever. She shared some of her own struggles with me that night, smaller things but still vulnerable, and I went to bed feeling like our bond had deepened into something unbreakable. I was a fool. For the next 2 years, nothing changed, or so I thought. Madison and I continued our regular coffee dates and shopping trips. She was maid of honor when Ethan proposed, and I said yes under the Christmas lights in Boston Common. She threw me an engagement party, organized dress shopping trips, and seemed genuinely invested in my happiness. I had no reason to suspect that behind her warm smiles and sisterly affection, something dark was brewing. The first sign that something was wrong came 8 months before my wedding. I was at work in the middle of presenting a campaign to our biggest client when I noticed my phone buzzing repeatedly. I ignored it, focused on the presentation, and nailed the pitch. The client was thrilled, my boss was pleased, and I was riding high on professional success when I finally checked my phone. 17 missed calls, 3 from Ethan, 4 from my father, 10 from a number I did not recognize. My blood went cold. I stepped out of the conference room and called Ethan first. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight with a concern I had never heard before. "Olivia, where have you been? I have been trying to reach you for an hour." "I was in a meeting," I said, my heart starting to pound. "What is wrong? What happened?" There was a pause that seemed to last forever. "Someone sent me something," Ethan said slowly. An email with documents, medical records, about you. The world tilted. I grabbed the wall to steady myself. What kind of documents? I managed to ask, though I already knew. Somehow, in the pit of my stomach, I already knew. From a treatment center, Ethan said, from when you were 18. Olivia, it says you were treated for substance abuse, that you overdosed, that you were there for 3 months. I could not breathe. The air had turned to concrete in my lungs. I can explain, I whispered. Ethan, please, I was going to tell you. I did tell you. You told me you struggled with your mom's death, he said. You told me you had a hard time. You never told me about this. You never told me you overdosed. You never told me you were in rehab for 3 months. The tears were falling now, and I did not care that I was standing in the hallway of my office where anyone could see. I was 17, I said, my voice cracking. I was a child, I was grieving, and I got help. I have been sober for over a decade. I am not that person anymore. Then why did you hide it from me? Ethan asked. We have been together for 4 years. We are getting married. Why would you hide something this significant? I did not have a good answer. Or rather, I had an answer, but it would sound like an excuse. I had hidden it because I was ashamed, because I had worked so hard to bury that chapter of my life, because I was terrified that if Ethan knew, he would see me differently. He would see me as damaged goods, as a liability, as someone who might relapse at any moment. I had planned to tell him eventually, maybe after we were married, when I felt more secure in his love. But I had waited too long, and now someone had done it for me. Who sent this? I asked, my mind racing. Who would have access to my medical records? The email came from an anonymous account, Ethan said. There was no name, no explanation, just the documents and a note saying you had a right to know the truth about the woman you were marrying. A note saying you had a right to know the truth. Those words echoed in my mind as I made my excuses to my boss and drove home in a daze. Someone had deliberately tried to sabotage my relationship. Someone had obtained my most private, most protected medical records and sent them to my fiancé with the explicit intention of destroying my engagement. But who? The list of people who knew about my time in treatment was impossibly short. My father, Ethan, now. The doctors and staff at the facility, most of whom I had not seen in over a decade. And Madison. Madison. No. I shook my head as I pulled into my parking space. Not Madison. She would never. She was my sister, my maid of honor, my confidant. She had held my hands and cried with me. She had promised to keep my secret safe. She had no reason to hurt me like this. But a small, insistent voice in the back of my mind whispered, who else could it have been? I spent the next few hours in damage control mode. Ethan came home and we talked for what felt like days. I showed him photos from before treatment, during and after. I pulled out my sobriety journal, the one I had kept during my recovery and still wrote in occasionally, documenting my progress and my growth. I was completely transparent, answering every question, no matter how painful. Ethan was hurt, that much was clear, not by what I had done as a grieving teenager, but by the fact that I had hidden it from him. Trust was fundamental to our relationship, and I had violated that trust by omission. But Ethan was also reasonable and compassionate, and he loved me. By the end of the night, we had reached an understanding. He forgave me for the secrecy. We agreed to move forward with complete honesty between us, but the question of who had sent that email still hung in the air like smoke. I told myself it must have been someone from the treatment center. A disgruntled employee, perhaps, or someone who had accessed old records illegally. I filed a complaint with the facility, demanding to know how my private medical information had been compromised. They launched an investigation, though they warned me it could take months to complete. In the meantime, life went on. Wedding planning continued, work was busy, and Madison was as supportive as ever, bringing me coffee and listening to my stress about seating charts and flower arrangements. When I told her about the email, carefully omitting the specific content, she was appropriately outraged on my behalf. "That is terrible," she said, her eyes wide with concern. "Who would do something like that?" "I do not know," I admitted, "but I am going to find out." If there was a flicker of something in her eyes at that moment, nervousness or guilt or fear, I did not see it. I was too blinded by my trust in her, too convinced that my sister would never betray me like this. The second blow came 2 months later. I was called into my boss's office for what I assumed would be a routine check-in. Instead, I found myself sitting across from the head of HR and our company's legal counsel. "Olivia," my boss began, his face grave, "we have received some concerning information about your background." My stomach dropped. "We received an anonymous tip," HR explained, pushing a folder across the table, "suggesting that you have a history of substance abuse that you failed to disclose during your hiring process." The room spun. This could not be happening. Not again. I opened the folder. Inside were copies of the same documents that had been sent to Ethan. My treatment records, my intake assessment, my discharge summary, all of it laid out in damning black and white. "I need to explain," I started, but my boss held up his hand. "Olivia, our concern is not the treatment itself. Many people struggle with these issues and go on to lead productive lives. Our concern is the potential deception. When you were hired, you signed documents certifying that you had disclosed any relevant medical history. Substance abuse treatment could be considered relevant, particularly in a role that involves managing significant client budgets and making high-stakes decisions." I felt the blood drain from my face. I had not disclosed my treatment during the hiring process because it had happened when I was a minor, over a decade before I applied for the job. I had not considered it relevant. I had not thought it was anyone's business. But now, someone was making it everyone's business. The meeting ended with me being placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. I walked out of that office feeling like I was living someone else's nightmare. In the span of 2 months, my past had been weaponized against me not once but twice. My relationship had been shaken. My career was now in jeopardy, and I still had no idea who was behind it. I drove to my father's house in a fog. I needed to see him, needed to ground myself in the one relationship I knew was safe and stable. He met me at the door with confusion on his face, which turned to alarm when he saw my tear-streaked cheeks. Inside, over cups of tea that neither of us drank, I told him everything. The email to Ethan, the anonymous tip to my employer, the documents that should have been sealed, should have been protected, should have been buried along with the 18-year-old girl I used to be. My father's face went through several emotions: shock, anger, and then something I did not expect: fear. "Olivia," he said slowly, "there is something I need to tell you." My heart stopped. "After you went to treatment," my father continued, "I took precautions. I had your record sealed. I paid extra for the facility to use a coded name in their system. The only way someone could access those documents is if they had very specific information: your real name, your date of birth, my name as your emergency contact, and the approximate dates of your stay." I stared at him. "Who would have all that information?" I asked, though the answer was already forming in my mind, terrible and unavoidable. "Only family," my father said. "Only someone you told." The realization hit me like a physical blow. Madison. I had told Madison everything that night on the porch. I had given her every detail, dates and names and locations, because I trusted her completely, because I thought we were bonding, because I never imagined she would use any of it against me. But it made no sense. Why would Madison want to hurt me? What possible motivation could she have? Unless everything I thought I knew about her was a lie. I drove home that night with my mind racing. I needed proof before I accused my stepsister of betraying me in the most devastating way possible. I needed to understand why she would do this. I needed to know if I was right. Over the following weeks, I became an investigator of my own life. I went through my phone, my emails, my social media, looking for anything that might reveal Madison's true feelings about me. I found small things at first. A message where Madison complained to a friend that I always got everything sent during my engagement party. A social media post where she had cropped me out of a group photo. Petty things, perhaps, but they formed a pattern. Then I discovered something bigger. I was looking through old photos on my laptop when I came across a folder I did not remember creating. It was labeled with a random string of numbers, and when I opened it, I found screenshots. Dozens of them. Screenshots of my social media posts, my professional accomplishments, my happy moments with Ethan. Each one had been saved with dates going back years. I had not taken these screenshots, which meant someone else had been using my laptop. Madison had borrowed my laptop several times over the years. She would claim she needed to print something or check her email while her phone charged. I had never thought twice about it. Now I realized she had been doing more than just checking her email. She had been documenting my life with the obsessive attention of someone keeping score. But why? I dug deeper. I started paying closer attention to my stepmother Catherine's behavior, and what I found was troubling. Catherine had always been polished and proper, treating me with surface-level warmth that never quite reached her eyes. But lately, she had become cold. She avoided looking at me during family dinners. She made pointed comments about people who kept secrets from their loved ones. Someone had told Catherine about my past, and that someone was almost certainly Madison. The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. A friend of mine from college, someone who had worked at the treatment center as an administrative assistant during my time there, reached out to me out of the blue. "Olivia," her message read, "I probably should not be telling you this, but someone contacted the facility asking about you. They called 3 times over the course of a month, claiming to be from your insurance company trying to verify records. They had all your information. Eventually, someone made a mistake and confirmed your admission dates. I thought you should know." I asked her when this happened. "The call started about 4 months ago," she wrote back. 4 months ago, just weeks before the email was sent to Ethan. Just enough time for someone to compile documentation and plan their attack. I had all the evidence I needed. Madison had systematically obtained my private medical records through deception. She had sent them to my fiancé. She had reported me to my employer. She had been sabotaging my life for months, maybe longer, all while smiling at me across coffee tables and helping me plan my wedding. The question was no longer who. The question was what I was going to do about it. My first instinct was to confront her, to scream at her, to demand answers, to let her know that I knew exactly what she had done. But something stopped me. A voice in my head, calm and cold, that whispered, "Wait." Madison had planned this carefully. She had been patient. She had been strategic. If I confronted her now, she would deny everything. She would cry and play the victim. She would turn our parents against me, and I would be left with nothing but my accusations and my broken heart. No. If I was going to fight back, I needed to be smarter than she was. I needed to beat her at her own game. I started gathering evidence, real evidence, the kind that would hold up not just in the court of public opinion, but potentially in an actual court. I saved every text message, every email, every social media interaction. I documented the timeline of events. I obtained records from the treatment facility showing the fraudulent phone calls. I consulted with a lawyer about my options. What I discovered gave me hope. What Madison had done was not just cruel, it was illegal. Obtaining someone's medical records through fraud is a federal crime. Distributing those records to unauthorized parties is a HIPAA violation with severe penalties. Defaming someone in a way that damages their employment could be grounds for a civil suit. Madison had committed multiple offenses, all documented, all traceable. But I did not want just legal consequences. I wanted Madison to experience the same devastating exposure she had inflicted on me. I wanted her life to crumble the way she had tried to crumble mine. I wanted her to know what it felt like to have her secrets broadcast to everyone she loved. So I started doing something I am not proud of. I started digging into Madison's life the same way she had dug into mine. What I found was remarkable. Madison had been lying to everyone about almost everything. Her prestigious marketing job at a top agency, she had been fired 6 months ago for falsifying expense reports. She had been collecting unemployment while telling our parents she was thriving at work. Her glamorous apartment in the city? She was 3 months behind on rent and facing eviction. Her string of wealthy boyfriends? The latest one had broken up with her after discovering she had stolen money from his wallet on multiple occasions. But that was just the surface. The deeper I dug, the more I uncovered. Madison had been systematically taking money from our parents for years, always with elaborate stories about professional development or investment opportunities that never materialized. She had embezzled over $20,000 from a nonprofit where she had volunteered, though they had agreed not to press charges if she paid it back, which she never did. She had created fake references for job applications, used Catherine's credit cards without permission, and lied about completing a professional certification that had actually been revoked after she was caught cheating on the exam. The picture that emerged was of someone who had been failing at life in spectacular fashion while watching me succeed. Someone whose resentment had curdled into obsession. Someone who had convinced herself that I was the reason for her problems, that my happiness was somehow stolen from her, that I deserved to be destroyed. I understood in a twisted way. Madison had grown up with every advantage, and yet she could not seem to make anything work. I had grown up with trauma and loss, and yet I had built a life worth living. In her warped worldview, this was unacceptable. If she could not rise, then I had to fall. But understanding did not mean forgiving. Understanding did not mean letting her get away with it. I spent 3 months building my case, 3 months of pretending nothing was wrong, of smiling at Madison across dinner tables, of playing the part of the oblivious victim while I constructed the trap that would spring shut around her. During those 3 months, the investigation at my work concluded. Thanks to my lawyer's intervention and the evidence I provided about how my medical records had been illegally obtained, the company decided not to take action against me. I was reinstated with back pay and an apology. My boss even admitted that the anonymous tip had originated from an IP address they had traced to a coffee shop near Madison's apartment. That piece of information was valuable. I filed it away for later. My relationship with Ethan grew stronger during this period. The crisis we had weathered had actually brought us closer together. Ethan became my ally in all of this, helping me gather evidence and plan my response. He was angry on my behalf, protective in a way that made me love him even more. We agreed to postpone the wedding by 6 months, partly because of the chaos in my life, and partly because I did not want Madison standing beside me as my maid of honor when I knew what she had done. Madison, of course, was devastated when I told her about the postponement. She cried and asked what she had done wrong. I told her nothing was wrong, that Ethan and I just needed more time. I held her hand and assured her that she would still be my maid of honor when the time came. The irony was bitter on my tongue. The trap I was constructing had multiple parts. First, I needed Madison to confess what she had done, preferably in a way I could document. Second, I needed to expose her lies to our parents, whose financial support she depended on completely. Third, I needed to alert the proper authorities about the crimes she had committed so that she would face real legal consequences. And fourth, the part I was most looking forward to, I needed Madison to experience the same public humiliation she had tried to inflict on me. The first part of my plan came together at a family dinner at our parents' lake house. I had arranged for Ethan to start a conversation about privacy and how terrible it was when people's personal information was leaked. I watched Madison's face carefully during this discussion. She nodded along, agreeing that it was horrible when people's trust was violated. Then, casually, I mentioned that my company had traced the anonymous tip to a specific location. They have the IP address, I said, keeping my voice light. Apparently, it came from a coffee shop in the city. The police are looking into it. Madison's face went pale. Just for a second, just a flicker, but I saw it. And more importantly, so did Ethan. Later that evening, when we were alone on the porch where this had all started, I made my move. "I know it was you," I said quietly. Madison froze. I saw panic in her eyes, followed immediately by calculation. She was deciding how to play this. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice pitched with innocent confusion. "The emails? The tip to my employer? All of it." "I know it was you, Madison." She laughed, but it was hollow. "Olivia, that is crazy. Why would I do something like that? You are my sister." "Stepsister," I corrected, and the word felt like ice, and I do not know why. I have asked myself that question every day for months. Why would someone I trusted completely try to destroy my life? Why would someone who said she loved me betray me in the most devastating way possible? "I did not do anything," Madison insisted, but her voice was starting to tremble. "They traced the IP address to the coffee shop on Newberry Street," I said. "The same coffee shop where you always get your latte on Tuesday mornings. The same coffee shop where you sit with your laptop for hours because your apartment does not have working internet since you stopped paying the bill." "That is circumstantial," Madison said, but she was backing away from me now. "I have the phone records from the treatment facility," I continued. "Someone called 3 times pretending to be from my insurance company. They had all my information that only you knew because I trusted you with my deepest secret on this very porch 3 years ago." Madison's face crumpled. For a moment, I thought she might finally admit the truth. Instead, she tried a different tactic. "Even if I did do something," she said, tears starting to fall, "it is only because you have everything and I have nothing. Do you know what it is like to watch you succeed at everything while my life falls apart? Do you know what it is like to have your mother constantly compare us?" I stared at her. "So you decided to destroy my career and my relationship because you are jealous?" I asked, incredulous. "Because your life is not going well? You do not understand what it is like," Madison sobbed. "You got through treatment and came out stronger. I have been struggling for years and no one even notices. Mom is always talking about how wonderful you are, how proud Dad is of you. I am invisible in my own family." There it was. The confession, wrapped in self-pity, but a confession nonetheless. And what Madison did not know was that I had my phone in my pocket, recording every word. "So instead of working on yourself," I said slowly, "instead of getting help or making changes, you decided to tear me down." "I just wanted things to be fair," Madison whispered. "Fair," I repeated. "You think it is fair to send my private medical records to my fiancé? To try to get me fired? To violate federal privacy laws and commit fraud?" Madison's eyes widened. She had not considered the legal implications. "I was not trying to hurt you that badly," she said quickly. "I just wanted to show everyone that you are not perfect, that you have secrets too." "Well, congratulations," I said coldly. "You succeeded, and now everyone is going to know your secrets." "What do you mean?" Madison asked, genuine fear crossing her face for the first time. "Did you think I would not find out about the job you got fired from? The money you stole from the non-profit? The rent you have not paid in months? The lies you have told our parents about every aspect of your life?" Madison went white. "How did you find out about that?" "I have spent the last 3 months learning everything about you," I said. "Every lie you have told, every bridge you have burned, every fraud you have committed, and I have documented all of it." "You cannot tell anyone," Madison said, grabbing my arm. "Please, Olivia, I will lose everything." I pulled my arm away. "You tried to make me lose everything," I said, "and you almost succeeded. My relationship nearly ended. I almost lost my job. My reputation was nearly destroyed. And for what? Because you are jealous? Because your life did not turn out the way you wanted?" "I will make it right," Madison said desperately. "I will do anything. Please, just do not tell Mom and Dad. They will cut me off. I will have nothing." For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. Madison was clearly struggling. She needed help. Maybe she deserved compassion. Then I remembered the way she had smiled at me during my engagement party while secretly plotting to destroy my relationship. I remembered the fear on my father's face when he realized someone had betrayed me. I remembered the humiliation of sitting in that HR office, my career hanging by a thread. No, Madison did not deserve compassion. She deserved consequences. You should have thought about that before you decided to ruin my life, I said, and walked away. The next few weeks were the hardest and most satisfying of my life. I started by sitting down with my father and Catherine. I told them everything, showing them the evidence I had gathered, the recordings of Madison's confession, the documentation of the fraud she had committed to obtain my records, the trail of lies she had told about her job, her finances, her entire life. Catherine was defensive at first, unwilling to believe that her daughter could do such things. But the evidence was undeniable. By the end of our conversation, she was sobbing, apologizing to me, and calling Madison to demand she come home immediately. The confrontation that followed was explosive. Madison tried every tactic she could think of. She denied, then minimized, then deflected, then blamed me for making her feel inferior. She accused me of being vengeful, of lacking compassion, of tearing the family apart. But our parents were not buying it anymore. They had seen the evidence, they knew the truth, and for the first time in her life, Madison was being held accountable. Catherine cut off Madison's financial support immediately. The allowance she had been receiving disappeared. The credit cards were canceled. The promises to help with rent were withdrawn. Madison was, for the first time in her adult life, completely on her own. But that was just the beginning. I filed a police report about the fraudulent obtaining of my medical records. The detective was very interested in the evidence I had gathered. It turned out that this kind of medical privacy violation was taken very seriously, and the phone calls Madison had made pretending to be from my insurance company constituted fraud. I also contacted the nonprofit Madison had stolen from and provided them with information about her current location and employment status. They had been trying to track her down for years. Armed with my information, they filed a civil suit to recover the money she had taken. Madison was served with papers 2 weeks later. I happened to be at my father's house when she came storming in, waving the lawsuit notice, screaming about how I had ruined her life. You ruined your own life, I said calmly. I just made sure you faced the consequences. The criminal investigation moved forward as well. Madison was eventually charged with fraud and identity theft related to the phone calls she had made to the treatment facility. She faced the possibility of federal charges for the medical privacy violations. Her lawyer negotiated a plea deal that kept her out of prison but required her to pay substantial fines, perform community service, and remain on probation for 3 years. She also had to pay restitution to me for the emotional distress and professional damage she had caused. The amount was significant, and since Madison had no money, it would be hanging over her head for years to come. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was the social one. Word got out about what Madison had done. These things always do. Our extended family learned about her betrayal. Her few remaining friends heard about her crimes. Her social media, which she had carefully curated to project an image of success and happiness, became a testament to her downfall. People who had admired her started to distance themselves. People who had trusted her stopped returning her calls. The perfect life she had been pretending to live crumbled away, revealing the emptiness beneath. Madison ended up moving across the country to start over. She sent me a letter before she left, a long, rambling apology that seemed more concerned with defending her actions than actually expressing remorse. She blamed her mother for putting too much pressure on her. She blamed our parents' marriage for making her feel like an outsider. She blamed me for being too perfect, for making her feel inadequate. She blamed everyone except herself. I did not respond to the letter. There was nothing left to say. In the end, my wedding happened, just not the way I had originally planned. We had a small ceremony with only our closest friends and family. Madison was not invited. Catherine came, subdued and apologetic, but she understood when I asked her to keep some distance from me. My father walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes. Ethan promised to love me forever, and I believed him because he had already proven it. The truth about my past, about the treatment I had gone through as a teenager, came out gradually. I decided to be open about it rather than continue hiding. To my surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Friends told me how brave I was. Colleagues shared their own struggles. My boss even mentioned that my resilience made me a more valuable employee, not less. The secret that Madison had tried to use against me became a source of strength instead of shame. I learned something important through all of this. The people who truly love you will not abandon you when they learn about your past. The people who judge you for your struggles are not people worth keeping in your life. And the people who try to use your secrets to destroy you are revealing far more about themselves than they are about you. Madison was consumed by envy and resentment. She had convinced herself that my success was somehow unfair, that I did not deserve the happiness I had worked so hard to build. Instead of addressing her own issues, she tried to tear me down, and in the end, she was the one who fell. I do not think about Madison much anymore. She is a distant memory, a cautionary tale, a reminder of how badly things can go when you trust the wrong person. Sometimes I feel a twinge of sadness for the sister I thought I had, the relationship I thought was real. But then I remember what she did, and the sadness fades. My life now is better than it has ever been. Ethan and I are happy. My career is thriving. My relationship with my father has deepened. I even started speaking publicly about mental health and recovery, something I never would have had the courage to do before. Madison tried to destroy me with my own story. Instead, she set me free to tell it on my own terms. Some secrets are not meant to be shared. I learned that lesson the hard way, but I also learned that secrets only have power over you as long as you keep them hidden. Once they are out in the light, once you own your truth, no one can use it against you. If you are reading this and you have trusted someone with something precious only to have them use it against you, I want you to know that you are not alone. Betrayal by someone close to you is one of the most painful experiences imaginable. It makes you question everything, every memory, every shared moment, every word they ever said. But you will survive it. You will come out stronger on the other side. And when you do, you will know with absolute certainty who deserves to be in your life and who does not. Madison thought she could break me. She was wrong. She only made me stronger. And in the end, the truth came out about both of us. My truth set me free. Hers destroyed her. That is the thing about secrets. They always come to light eventually. The question is whether you will be the one to tell your story, or whether you will let someone else tell it for you. I chose to tell my own story, and I will never give anyone the power to use my past against me again. Not ever.